Footage of terrified astronauts in a top-secret mission shows the real reason why humans never went to the moon again. Welcome back to Cinesynthesis. Sit back and enjoy the show. Meet John, Ben, and Nate. They are Apollo 18's lucky crew. But wait a minute, wasn't Apollo 18 canceled? Not according to this secret footage. John says that he got a call from NASA to tell him it was back on, only this time it was a classified mission. His best guess is that it has something to do with the Cold War and detecting Russian missiles. Ben is a bit upset that he has to lie to his family, and Nate sounds a bit suspicious about that much secrecy. Liftoff is uneventful, and so is the journey there. Ben and Nate tease John about him coming all the way out here only to fly the orbiter, missing out on all the extravehicular fun. The pilot responds with jokes on superstition, as Nate will be the 13th person to set foot on the lunar surface. Arriving at their destination, the lunar module, Liberty, is successfully undocked. John is left alone on the command module, the Freedom ship, while Nate and Ben are off on their 2-day mission. Nate's first steps are a little sad. He feels like it's a speech-worthy moment, but it would be silly. Probably nobody outside the Department of Defense will watch this. Day 1 is all about collecting rocks, telling stories, and goofing off around the flag. Oh, and they also placed the missile detector, which is kind of important. Dinner time is a depressing choice between peas or carrots. John begins to complain about radio interference, but Houston just keeps replying that they'll check it soon. In the middle of the night, if we can call it that, both astronauts wake up with strange noises coming from the communication system. It's hard to tell what's causing the problem. The noise is intermittent and mixed up with static. Neither astronaut feels the need to comment on how creepy it sounds, and it's probably a wise decision. Mission Control tells them to chill and go back to bed. Ben starts day 2 filming Nate asleep to prove to him that he snores. See, that's where all that taxpayer money's going. John tells them that Freedom will be silent for a while as it orbits the backside of the moon. As they begin to get ready for the day, Ben is startled to see one of his samples on the floor. He's sure that he had properly bagged and tagged it before. He sounds annoyed that he'll have to mark this one as contaminated, but Nate is much more worried. There is simply no explanation as to how that rock ended up lying on the floor like a Lego brick. Anyway, they bag it again, and they leave the module for more work. There's a transmitter for them to set up for the DoD. John's silence is expected, but now Houston has gone quiet too. Nate says that it must be a temporary blockage. Now it's Ben's turn to take the issue more seriously. Comms should not be down for this long in such an important mission. But his rant is cut short by a more frightening discovery. He calls Nate to show him footprints. It sounds crazy, but the marks are very clear and could hardly be anything else. Nate leaves his own footprint there for a side-by-side comparison that isn't even necessary. That is obviously not theirs. Ben keeps calling Houston with a growing despair in his voice. John is still gone too. So the two astronauts decide to follow the phantom prints. What could go wrong with that plan? Luckily for them, the track doesn't go very far. At some point, the footprints stop making sense at all, as if the person who made them were walking in circles. Nate points out that it could be a disoriented astronaut. But remember, this is 1974. It's not like they're expecting to bump into a billionaire on vacation. Who on earth could be up here with them? The Russians, of course. Nate finds a Soviet lander nearby. He is shocked that the Russians made it to the moon and nobody knew about it. But Ben points out the obvious. They are here too, and nobody knows about it. Determined to push their luck as far as it can go, they decide to enter the Soviet lander. The place looks like a crime scene. Someone had a really bad day in there. Exploring that area outside, Ben says there's nothing in the near crater, but it's too dark to see. So he decides to go in. Nate warns him to get out if the temperature drops too much, as the suits are not made for that kind of cold. Inside the crater, Ben says the ground feels softer. He uses a strobe light to help him see a bit ahead, making it the perfect moment for a jump scare. Sure enough, one of the camera flashes eventually reveals a horrid sight. Their Soviet colleague is lying lifeless on the bottom of the crater. They drag him out and begin to speculate about what happened. Inspecting his ripped suit, Ben suddenly jolts back. Something is moving inside it. Nate tells him to get away from the cosmonaut, but Ben is too curious to listen. He puts his hand back into the suit again and retrieves a moon rock. The situation's getting more and more bizarre. They return to Liberty and contact Houston. A man named Thomas confirms that it's a secure line. Ben tells him that they found a Soviet lander on the South Pole. He finds it hard to believe that this is just a coincidence, as both landing sites are comparatively close. Thomas reminds him that this is a Department of Defense mission, meaning everything is on a need-to-know basis. He promises to get someone from the DoD to talk to them soon. But now, Ben is beginning to suspect their own mission. The level of secrecy doesn't make sense. At least, not if they are really here just to set up a couple of detecting devices. Meanwhile, John is busy recording his philosophical remarks about space. He's still on the backside and hasn't heard anything about dead cosmonauts. While they wait for freedom to return, Nate and Ben try to get some sleep. But then, Nate is startled awake by a falling helmet. Outside, the flag that they had planted 2 days ago has vanished. Ben thinks that it must have been the second cosmonaut, the same person who probably attacked the first one. Now they are both freaking out. Well, the good news is that John is finally back. He is shocked to hear how much he missed, as nobody expected anything to happen at all. When the DoD contacts them, they admit that there were rumors about a Soviet lunar mission. It was never confirmed, but they have enough details to correct Ben's theory about the flag. There was only one cosmonaut in the Soviet lander. Well, much as they would like to contradict the information, they have been inside the lander and they know it's true. Their minds were firmly fixed on the idea of another cosmonaut only to avoid panic. Unable to determine who or what is sharing the moon with them at the moment, they make their first smart decision and prepare to launch Liberty. But just as the launch begins, so does that eerie interference. The external camera begins to move, and then appears to be dragged away. In the middle of the countdown, Liberty gets hit hard by something. Communications are down, and there's an oxygen leak. Nate goes outside to check it out. Minutes later, he tells Ben that aliens are real. Very understandably, Ben begins to wonder about his partner's sanity status. Nate tells him that the ground is covered in non-human footprints, and the lander has been damaged by a clawed creature. As if this wasn't terrifying enough, he tells Ben that he can feel something moving inside his suit. Suddenly, he's screaming in terror. His erratic movement produces that same circular footprint pattern on the ground. While Ben leaves the lander to help him, we see that something is inside Nate's helmet. It looks like a giant spider, if spiders had claw-like pointy legs. By the time Ben gets to him, Nate's unconscious and his helmet is broken. Ben manages to save him, and then keeps trying to contact either John or Mission Control, to no avail. When Nate wakes up, Ben is happy to see that he's not traumatized beyond recovery. But then he realizes that he's not even scared or shaken by what just happened. That's because he doesn't remember anything. In fact, he remembers it wrong. He says that he went outside, tripped, and fell. The end. No creature, no attack, no horrific near-death experience. When he takes off his shirt, both of them are taken aback by what they see. There is a wound in his stomach, and something is moving inside it. Ben quickly grabs some tools and removes the object, which turns out to be a moon rock. But before he can analyze it, Nate smashes it into pieces. He is completely furious right now. Spider aliens have just put a moon rock inside his body. He did not sign up for this. Ben decides to share his suspicions about that. He thinks that the DoD knew about the creatures. Those devices that they set up are not meant to detect Russians. They are alien detectors. To make things worse, Nate is now covered in red spots. It becomes evident that he is infected with something. He tells Ben that he can't go back to Earth carrying this thing, whatever it may be. Ben tries to argue at first, but it's hard to deny that Nate's condition is growing worse very fast. And it seems to affect his brain, too. His behavior gets violent and unpredictable. While Ben sleeps, he smashes all the cameras and yells that he won't let the DoD watch his final hours. As the oxygen level gets dangerously low inside Liberty, the two astronauts decide to move into the Soviet lander. Halfway there, Nate jumps off the rover, determined to stay behind. That moving, altruistic gesture also happens to crash the rover and knock Ben out. How nice of him. When poor Ben comes to, he sees Nate near that same crater where they found the Russian. All of a sudden, he is dragged down rapidly. And Ben goes after him, believe it or not. And that's when Ben makes a horrible discovery about the spider-like creatures. They are not moving the rocks around. They are the rocks. That's what finally makes him stop messing around and run for his life. Inside the Soviet lander, he contacts the DoD. They have the nerve to tell him that, 1, they knew all about the spider rocks, and 2, he is no longer welcome on their adorable planet because chances are that he's infected too. Unable to punch a face via radio, Ben has no choice but to sit down and cry like a baby. Until John manages to reach him, ready to disobey the DoD. Preparing to launch, Ben still has to deal with a maniac Nate one last time before the spider rocks finish him. Ben manages to get off the ground, but he never makes it to the ship. The cosmonaut had filled that lander with moon rocks. They not only take care of Ben, but they also send the vehicle toward freedom at such high speed that the footage ends here. John, Nate, and Ben are never heard from again. Their families are told that they had a freak accident. After the Apollo 18 secret mission, NASA has never attempted to visit the moon again. To the best of our knowledge, of course. Thank you for watching. How'd you like the story? Let us know in the comment section down below.